It was Friday, April 21, 2023. The students of Freedom Miller High School didn't seem to care about the kidnapping of Gus Blue, for they had their own problems to worry about. Cynthia felt relieved that he wasn't killed or tortured, but she said nothing to Gus. Gus was in his second period world geography class. Gus was sitting in the front of class. Right now the teacher, Mrs. Sherman, was talking about the Soviet states leaving in 1990 to 1991. You see, Kazakhstan was actually the last state of the USSR. Russia actually left just before them. It is kind of sad to see what happened to one of the great superpowers and our main rival. Gus could barely keep his eyes open after everything that happened in the past week. He closed his eyes and it stayed closed until Mrs. Sherman yelled into his ear at the top of her lungs. "Wakey, wakey, nerdy, nerdy," she exclaimed. The class began to explode in laughter, especially Tony Barrington, who had been bullying Gus constantly. Tony was the son of the now Mayor George Barrington. He was a short, white kid with a stubble. He was a little bit tubby and had massive leg muscles. He was one of the popular kids due to his father's political status in Benko Falls. "Imagine being so fucking stupid that you fall asleep in class," Tony said. The class began murmuring in agreement. Gus was sick of this antagonizing from the majority of his peers. He thought about how he was going to be able to gain power like he did with Ralph back in the day. Maybe Aaliyah knew a lot about gaining power in schools. But everything had to be this way. For now, Gus had to deal with Tony and his grip on the common student. Tony whispered something to one of his friends sitting nearby. The friend complied with what Tony said. The friend wrote something on an orange sticky note. "Kick me and suck my micropenis." The friend got out of his chair. When Gus wasn't looking, the kid stuck the note onto Gus's back. The bell rang. It was now time for third period English. Luckily, Gus didn't have it with Tony. Gus packed his things up and started walking in the commons. Then, another one of Tony's friends, Johnny Wilson, approached Gus. He kicked Gus with all of his strength. Gus fell on the floor humiliated. Gus Blue checked his back and felt the sticky note. He was furious about what had just happened and was eager for revenge. Suddenly, an announcement on the intercom came on. "All students, please go to the auditorium. Do not go to your third period class." Gus was relieved because there was an English test today about the hero's journey. The students began piling up in the auditorium. It was a large theater that was built back when Freedom Miller High School was first constructed. The walls and the chairs all had a feel from the 1920s. At least the auditorium was still the same way it was, even after the constant renovation and modernization of the school. "I have a lot of things to say," Principal Jordan said. "First of all, there have been some recent injuries. Mr. Volkov tripped and injured his leg while hiking. And you all probably know about the car accident that Chad was in. Fortunately, Chad will fully recover just before the next football season starts. But the main reason that I called this assembly is because I am proud to announce a surprise dance tonight at 7 p.m. You can bring a friend along if you wish. Admission is $5. Do not be late." Gus scoffed at the idea of going to the school dance. But he remembered that he will probably be forced to go due to the pressure of the Novus Ordo Seclorum. The problem with Gus was the logistics of this plan. He needed backup and support. Luckily, Gus knew the person to talk to. Gus Blue opened up his computer while Principal Jordan was babbling about school news and holidays coming up. He opened his email and composed an email to ralph.colombo@bfsd27students.org. Hey Ralph, it really has been a while. But I have a little bit of a problem here at Freedom Miller High. Is everything still going okay with the crew? But the problem here is that I have been forced to attempt to gain influence and power in the school. I thought that I was done with all of this popularity bullshit back in 8th grade, but I guess some things have to be brought back. Anyways, there is this school dance tonight, and I was thinking you could come so that we could bring back the members of the 8th grade table. Maybe recruit some members, but I can't do it alone. Signed, Gus Blue. Gus's 4th and 5th period classes were the same mediocre periods that they always were. But then came Mr. Donaldson's 6th period algebra class. Aliyah was talking to Gus about the plan and the dance. But Gus was barely even listening after the recent drainage of his energy from yesterday. Mr. Donaldson clearly saw that Gus needed sleep. But Mr. Donaldson thought that Gus really needed an Algebra 2 problem for him to solve. Mr. Blue, I have an extra tricky question since you have been so good lately, Mr. Donaldson said in a snarky voice. Find x if 2 log x log x 2 equals 2. I don't know, Mr. Donaldson. You haven't taught us this stuff yet, Gus said. If the jock Chad Timberton can do it, you can, you idiot, said Mr. Donaldson, clearly picking on Gus after the test. I don't know, 7, Gus responded in a confused voice. Wrong. And I will not tell a failure like you what the correct answer is, Mr. Donaldson said in an excited tone. He was clearly glad that Gus got it wrong. After school, Gus opened up his email and saw that Ralph had responded with, I regret to inform you, Gus, but the crew split apart back in October. You were the one that helped keep us together, but without you, we agreed to go our separate ways. I still sit with some of them. By the way, I am totally down to go to the dance. I will arrive at 6. At your place. Maybe I'll let them know that you are back in business. They became our friends. Because of you. See you then, also wear something nice. Sincerely, Ralph. It was official, Ralph was coming to the dance. Gus watched TV in the meantime. The Channel 7 News was talking about the shooting in a strip club. And on TV was The Economist that Gus met last night. Harry Roots was on the TV. Why do you think the shooter targeted your club and shot you in the leg? The news reporter asked. Well, I personally think that these stupid brookies want to tamper with my women and the free market. Those stupid commies, Harry said in an aggressive tone. Gus fell asleep while watching it. He didn't know how long he was out. What Gus did know was that he was awoken by a doorbell at 5:57 p.m. It was Ralph. Gus got up and opened the door. Ralph stood in an entirely black suit that made him look even taller and skinnier than he actually was. I can't believe that you actually watch the news, Ralph said. Still do, because so much has happened to Benko Falls recently. We really are living in history right now, Gus said. Gus then picked up a piece of paper he saw that was delivered onto his front door. Okay, so here is the plan. My dad has all this cocaine and alcohol. I am going to spike the beverages to make the students a little bit rowdy. So do not drink the punch. I will encourage the other rich kids to drink it. But to make sure the plan goes well, I am going to incite a riot, and with the stimulation of their senses, it will be a fight and the dance will go wrong. They will be humiliated in front of the entire school. Also, if you brought any friends, tell them about the plan. I could use some help. Alia Marie DuPont. Gus read the note and took a shower. He put on his best suit, ready to enact the plan. It took Gus 20 minutes, but he wanted to get there early to prepare. All right, let's go to the dance, Gus said. Oh, by the way, do you have your $5? We need the money to get in. Yeah, I got the money. Also, I noticed the little note you had there, Ralph said. Gus instantly reacted in fear. Did you read it? I did. I can help out. But you need to make sure I don't get in trouble. So if everything hits the fan, we run away from the school. Even if cocaine is illegal, I still need to pay you back for all the good that you did, Ralph said. One more thing. Is she your girlfriend or something? Not at all, Gus said as they got in the car. The 5-minute car ride was peaceful. Gus thought about everything that has happened in his life, from Toby Winters to Bloodshot. Gus didn't even know the real name of Bloodshot. Gus thought that one day, the three could team up and fight against the Novus Ordo Seclorum and Mr. Dominus. But, for now, Gus Blue had no power in order to fight the Goliath. They had now arrived in the gym. It was quite early still, so there were not that many people there. Gus was surprised to see Wilfred Tuco, the cocaine dealer, at the dance. Wilfred walked up to Gus and whispered into his ear. The drinks have a lot of the good old WT recipe and some vodka to make them rowdy and to make them riot. Wilfred walked away from the gym. It was clear that Wilfred wasn't allowed there. After a lot of drinks from the not contaminated water fountain and some dancing, the time was now 9:27 p.m., and Alia was now ready for phase 2. She met up with Gus and Ralph. Who is the friend you brought, Gus? She asked. Gus responded with, he is one of my old friends, Ralph. And he is down to help with the plan. You are going to start the riot, but what are we going to do? Fuel the riot, throw some punches at them, try to mock and insult them. Make sure that they will hate each other for the rest of the night, Alia said. As Billie Jean by Michael Jackson was playing, Alia walked up to Tony Barrington. Hey, I overheard Dick Malco calling you a triggered trash can, she said. What? I thought he was friends with me. The drug affected Tony said in an aggressive tone. Shannon Porter and Jacob Vingo were agreeing with Richard and also spreading misinformation to the other popular kids, Alia said. Well, I have to give those pricks some justice, Tony said, walking away. Gus walked up to 17-year-old Shannon and said, by the way, I heard Tony wants to suck your dick. The wasted Shannon shoved Gus away from her and yelled, I don't even have a dick, you fucking dumbass. Ralph then walked up to Jacob and told him, I heard that Shannon and Richard are thinking about giving you a swirly. I would totally beat him up to ensure that they don't do that. I will totally beat their asses in a fight. Bring it on. The intoxicated Jacob screamed. It was inevitable that the fight was going to happen, but the question was who was going to throw the first punch. Tony Barrington saw a dazed Richard sitting near the refreshments. Tony sprinted towards him and punched him right in the face. What the fuck is wrong with you? Richard said. You called me a triggered trash can, Tony exclaimed in rage. But before Richard could respond, Shannon kicked Tony in the balls. Tony screamed in pain as he fell to the floor. At this point, essentially, everyone noticed what was going on. Then Jacob blitzed into the area, shoving Shannon into Richard. Richard, who was now pissed at the aggression of Jacob and Tony, decided to grab both of their scalps and bang their heads into each other. However, Tony ran away to the DJ stand. Richard and Shannon chased behind. Shannon shoved Richard into a crowd of bystanders. Some of the bystanders had also consumed the tampered drinks, so they joined in. Shannon had made it to the DJ stand, which was playing Together Forever by Rick Astley. She grabbed Tony's coat and threw him onto the turntable. The music abruptly stopped. But before Shannon could dominate Tony, a mob of around 10 people charged at Shannon into the DJ stand. The entire setup was destroyed by the pile of people. Tony realized an opportunity arose. He picked up one of the speakers and slammed it straight into Richard's face. Richard fell onto the ground where Jacob would begin punching him in the face until Tony shoved Jacob away. Richard used the time to get up and yank Shannon into another crowd of bystanders. The bystanders got up and started punching Richard in the gut. One student told Principal Jordan, who tried to end the fight. However, as he grabbed some of the kids away, the other members would kick and punch him as his hands were exposed. The rest of the faculty tried to end the conflict, but they met the same problems. It became clear that the fight had turned into complete chaos and anarchy. The sober Ralph and Gus both decided to run. Alia stayed and filmed the fight. She was glad that her plan had worked. It was her magnum opus. The plan had made all of them seem like clowns, and even some of the other popular kids joined in, ruining their reputation. Gus and Ralph were now outside of the school. Well, that hit the fan pretty quickly. Gus said, "Definitely, I kind of expected the plan to fail, but I mean whoever made those drugs is a madman," Ralph replied. "Yeah. Hey, I have a question for you. So you said that the crew split because I was gone. But I am now back in business. My question is, are you?" Gus said. Ralph said, "Absolutely, I can talk to Jesse and Rico. Maybe we can bring the crew back together. The problem is that Jesse hates Rico now, and I am stuck on both sides. You are the only thing that can bring the crew back. Rumors are not enough. My suggestion is that you head to Benco High School and talk to both of them. They both want Gus Blue back." Ralph and Gus got into the car and drove to Gus's home. Ralph drove off into the distance. Gus was excited for the weekend coming up.